What happens when one of radio's most notorious shock jocks decides to call out Hollywood royalty on live television? Buckle up, because what you're about to witness is absolutely explosive. Meghan Markle thought she was walking into a friendly chat on The View, but Howard Stern had other plans. What unfolded left the entire studio stunned. The familiar theme music faded out as Whoopi Goldberg welcomed the audience. Seated at the iconic table were Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin, and Alyssa Farah Griffin. But this time, there was a special guest co-host, Howard Stern. With a smirk, he promised to ask the questions others were too polite to touch. The audience chuckled nervously, unaware of what was coming. Moments later, Meghan Markle entered, polished and poised in a cream-colored blazer, her smile perfectly rehearsed. She exchanged warm pleasantries with the hosts and began speaking eloquently about her charitable work, female empowerment, and social justice. Everything was going according to her team's script, until Howard leaned in. "I've been listening to you talk about empowerment and authenticity," he said, "but how do you reconcile preaching authenticity when much of your public persona has been built on criticizing the very family that made you famous?" The studio fell silent. Meghan's smile faltered. Howard pressed on, accusing her of profiting from her grievances while simultaneously rejecting the scrutiny that comes with fame. Meghan defended herself, insisting he was mischaracterizing her experiences. But Stern wasn't backing down. He pointed to her interviews, Netflix deals, and podcasts, asking why, if life was so unbearable, she continued to center her brand around it. As the other co-hosts tried to intervene, Howard dismissed them, insisting the public deserved accountability. Meghan grew visibly flustered, countering that he was oversimplifying complex situations. Stern shot back that it looked as though she wanted all the benefits of celebrity, without the drawbacks. The tension escalated. Howard accused Meghan of weaponizing progressive language to shield herself from criticism. Meghan denied it, her voice rising. Stern countered with references to past claims she and Prince Harry had made, questioning their accuracy. He laughed bitterly, calling much of her narrative public relations, not research. The atmosphere grew heavier. The other hosts scrambled to calm things, but Stern doubled down, declaring that society had become too afraid to challenge certain public figures. He claimed Meghan's carefully crafted narrative was manipulative and strategically planned long before her royal exit. Meghan's composure cracked. She accused Stern of having no idea what he was talking about. He acknowledged he hadn't been there, but pointed out neither had Oprah or the journalists who promoted her side of the story. "That's not research," he said. "That's PR." By now, Meghan was visibly shaken. Stern insisted he wasn't attacking her personally, but was demanding honesty and accountability. "We've created a culture where some people are immune from criticism because they've wrapped themselves in the language of social justice," he argued. But real justice requires truth. The cameras captured every moment of the clash, an unscripted, raw confrontation unlike anything the View audience had ever seen. The studio audience shifted uneasily, caught between sympathy for Meghan and fascination with Stern's boldness. Whoopi tried to steer the conversation back to safe ground, but Howard wasn't finished. "Whoopi, you've known me for decades," he said. "You know I don't play by PR rules. If Meghan is here to talk about empowerment, then empowerment should include being empowered enough to answer real questions." Meghan drew in a sharp breath, her polished exterior visibly fraying. "Howard, empowerment is about giving women the tools and the voice to tell their stories, no matter how uncomfortable those stories might be for others." Stern pounced. "Then why does it seem like the only story you've been telling for years is how bad you had it in the royal family? Where's the story about the work you've done? Where's the spotlight on the women you claim to champion? All anyone ever hears is Meghan Markle versus the monarchy." Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her tone protective. Howard, you're missing the broader point. Meghan has shined a light on the inner workings of an outdated institution. That takes courage. Howard shook his head. Sonny, courage is facing hardship without cashing in on it. Courage is Princess Diana walking through landmines in Angola, not Meghan Markle signing a $100 million Netflix deal to complain about her in-laws. The audience gasped. Meghan stiffened in her chair, eyes flashing. How dare you diminish the challenges I faced? You have no idea what it was like to endure constant attacks on my character, my mental health, my family. Stern didn't flinch. You're right, I don't. But neither does the public. All we get is your version of events, carefully packaged in documentaries, podcasts, and interviews. You keep telling us you want privacy, yet here you are again, on the world's biggest daytime talk show. Which is it, Meghan? Privacy or publicity? Joy Behar raised her hands as if to halt a runaway train. Howard, come on. This is getting out of hand. Meghan came here to talk about her charity initiatives, not to get grilled. Howard turned sharply toward Joy. That's the problem, Joy. Every time Meghan appears, it's the same script. Charities, empowerment, victimhood. No one ever challenges the inconsistencies. That's why people are skeptical. And let's not pretend the public doesn't have a right to ask when they're the ones funding the brand she and Harry have built. Meghan leaned forward now, her voice trembling but defiant. My brand, as you put it, is about using my platform to help those without one. If my story inspires even one woman to leave an oppressive environment, then it's worth it. Howard raised his eyebrows. So the royal family is an oppressive environment now? You lived in castles. You had staff. You had privilege most people can't even imagine. That's oppression? The tension was unbearable. Sarah Haynes tried to step in. Maybe what Meghan means is that even in privileged spaces, women can feel trapped or silenced. Howard turned to Sarah. Fine, but then let's call it what it is. Discomfort, not oppression. Words matter. When you inflate your personal struggles to the level of systemic injustice, you diminish the very causes you claim to support. Meghan's eyes glistened. You're twisting my words. I never said my pain was greater than anyone else's. I've simply shared my truth. Howard leaned back, his voice cutting but calm. And that's the catch, isn't it? My truth. But there's no such thing as my truth. There's the truth and there's perspective. You've sold perspective as fact, and people are starting to notice. The audience murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. This was daytime television, not a Senate hearing, and yet it felt like Meghan was on trial. Alyssa Farah Griffin spoke up gently. Howard, even if you disagree with Meghan's approach, don't you think she's entitled to share her story? Isn't that what freedom of speech is all about? Of course, Howard said. She has every right to share it. And I have every right to question it. That's what accountability looks like. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from scrutiny. Meghan folded her arms across her blazer, her posture stiff. Accountability also applies to the people who twist and weaponize my words. For years, I've endured a smear campaign, and every time I speak up, people like you say, I'm playing the victim. Howard softened his tone slightly, but his words were no less sharp. Maybe people wouldn't say that if every public appearance wasn't framed around how much you've suffered. People want to root for you, Meghan. They really do. But you keep reminding them why they shouldn't. The silence that followed was heavy. The audience seemed frozen, waiting to see if Meghan would walk out. Instead, she sat taller, forcing composure back into her voice. Howard, I came here today to talk about real issues, women's empowerment, education, mental health. I'm not going to let you derail that with your provocations. Howard smiled thinly. Then talk about it. But do it without turning yourself into the center of every story. That's real empowerment. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice steady and maternal. All right, I think we need to take a breath here. This show is about conversation, not confrontation. Meghan, we want to hear about your work. Howard, you've made your point. Let's find some common ground. But Stern wasn't done. Whoopi, with all respect, the common ground is honesty. If Meghan truly wants to be a role model, she has to stop hiding behind perfectly scripted narratives. Otherwise, she's not empowering anyone, she's just selling an image. Meghan's jaw tightened. You may think you're exposing me, Howard, but what you're really doing is proving exactly why women are afraid to speak out. They know they'll be torn apart, mocked, and belittled by men who think they know better. Howard's face hardened. Don't make this about gender, Meghan. This isn't about you being a woman. It's about you being a public figure who wants the spotlight on her terms. You want praise without criticism, but that's not how it works. The studio buzzed with nervous energy. The other hosts looked from Meghan to Howard, unsure of how to bring the train back on track. The camera zoomed in closer, capturing every flicker of emotion across Meghan's face. She steadied herself and finally responded, her voice firm but weary. Howard, I've survived worse than this conversation. If you think you can intimidate me into silence, you're mistaken. I will continue to use my platform for good, regardless of whether you or anyone else approves. Howard leaned back, folding his arms, his smirk returning. Then at least admit that it's not just for good, it's also for you. And maybe people would respect the honesty. The audience erupted in nervous applause, unsure if they were clapping for Meghan's resilience or Howard's brutal candor. Whoopi quickly cut to commercial, her voice tight but professional. We'll be right back. The moment the cameras went dark, the studio atmosphere shifted. Meghan sat frozen, lips pressed together, eyes blazing with restrained fury. Howard leaned back casually in his chair, satisfied that he had said what no one else dared to. The other hosts whispered frantically, producers rushed the stage, and the audience buzzed like they had witnessed a cultural earthquake. What had been meant as a light-hearted daytime segment had become one of the most uncomfortable and unforgettable interviews in The View's history. Meghan Markle had faced Howard Stern head-on, and though she survived the clash, the cracks in her polished image were now impossible to ignore. And for Howard, it was just another day of asking the questions no one else would. When the cameras came back from commercial, the atmosphere in the studio was noticeably strained. The audience clapped politely, but the energy had shifted. Whoopi Goldberg, always the professional anchor, tried to recenter the discussion. Welcome back to The View. Before the break, things got a little spirited. Let's take a breath and continue the conversation. Meghan forced a composed smile, but the redness around her eyes betrayed the stress of what had just transpired. Howard Stern, on the other hand, sat relaxed, his arms draped over the chair as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Whoopi gestured toward Meghan. You were telling us about your new initiatives supporting women's education. Let's hear more about that. Meghan straightened her shoulders, her voice calm but brittle. Yes, I've been working with organizations around the world to expand access to education for young women. Education is the most powerful tool we can give them, and it changes lives for generations. It was an elegant pivot, but Howard wasn't ready to let go. He leaned in with a sly grin. That's great, Meghan, but let me ask you, how much of the money from your Netflix deals or your podcast ventures actually goes to those causes? Because when people look at your lifestyle, the mansions, the designer wardrobes, they start to wonder if it's really about the charities or about the brand of Meghan Markle. Global victim turned hero. Gasps rippled through the studio. Sunny Hostin bristled. Howard, that's incredibly unfair. Meghan has given millions to charity. Has she? Howard asked bluntly. Or has her foundation pledged millions that haven't materialized yet? There's a difference. Meghan's jaw clenched. I have given both my time and resources. The impact of my work speaks for itself. Then why not be transparent? Howard shot back. "Publish the numbers. Show the receipts. Because right now it looks like smoke and mirrors." The studio audience murmured again. Meghan's composure was slipping, but she refused to break. "Howard, philanthropy isn't about publicity stunts. It's about doing the work quietly, behind the scenes. Not everything needs to be broadcast." Howard smirked. "And yet, here you are broadcasting it." The tension was unbearable. Joy Behar threw her hands up in exasperation. "Oh my God, can we please stop with the cross-examination? This isn't a courtroom drama." But that was exactly how it felt. Meghan versus Howard. Narrative versus interrogation. Finally, Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to lighten the mood. "Meghan, I'd love to hear more about how you balance your charity work with motherhood. I think that's something a lot of women would relate to." It was a lifeline, and Meghan seized it. She spoke warmly about her children, about balancing public commitments with private family life. For a brief moment, the temperature in the room cooled. The audience softened, applauding her words about being a working mother. But Howard wasn't done. He leaned back, his voice deceptively casual. "So you want privacy for your kids, but you're also planning a children's book series based on your family experiences? Again, Meghan, which is it, privacy or publicity?" The audience groaned. Even some of Howard's fans thought he was pushing too far. Meghan exhaled sharply, her patience frayed. "Howard, I think your definition of privacy is deliberately misleading. Privacy doesn't mean never sharing. It means choosing what to share, when and how. That's every parent's right." Howard shrugged. "Fair enough. But don't be surprised when people call out the contradictions. That's the cost of being a public figure." By now, Whoopi had had enough. "Howard, Meghan, we're moving on," she declared, her tone final. The segment wrapped with awkward applause, Meghan smiling tightly, while Howard looked amused by the chaos he had unleashed. The fallout. By the next morning, clips of the confrontation had gone viral. Headlines blared across tabloids and mainstream outlets alike. "Howard Stern eviscerates Meghan Markle on The View." Daytime TV chaos. Meghan Markle clashes with shock jock. The interview that left Meghan shaken. Social media exploded with divided opinions. Hashtags like Poirot Team Meghan and White Team Howard trended simultaneously. Some praised Stern for saying what many had been thinking. Others accused him of bullying, calling the interview a public ambush. On Twitter, one viewer wrote, "Finally, someone asked Meghan the tough questions. Howard said what the media's been too scared to." Another countered, "Howard Stern was disgraceful. Meghan went there to talk about charity, and he turned it into a circus." The View's producers defended the decision to bring Stern on as a guest co-host, claiming they hadn't anticipated the level of hostility. But behind the scenes, insiders admitted they knew exactly what would happen. Stern's reputation wasn't built on polite conversation, it was built on confrontation. Meghan's response. In the days that followed, Meghan remained silent publicly, but sources close to her told entertainment reporters she felt betrayed by the show. She had been assured it would be a positive platform for her charitable initiatives, not a trap. Her team began drafting statements and considering whether to appear on another outlet to set the record straight. Oprah's name was floated again, though some advisors warned that returning to Oprah might only reinforce Howard's point about her recycling the same narrative. Howard's victory lap. Howard, on the other hand, reveled in the spotlight. On his radio show the next morning, he doubled down. "Look, I didn't say anything millions of people aren't already thinking. The difference is, I said it to her face, Meghan wants to be untouchable, but if you put yourself out there, you better be ready to answer for it." His listeners ate it up. Callers flooded the lines with praise, calling him fearless, brutally honest, and the only one with the guts to hold Meghan accountable. The cultural debate. The clash sparked a wider debate across media and culture. Was Howard Stern holding Meghan Markle accountable, or was he bullying her on national television? Was Meghan a victim of relentless scrutiny, or a master manipulator of her own narrative? Morning shows, late-night hosts, and podcasts dissected the incident from every angle. Analysts pointed out how the confrontation revealed deep cultural divides. Some saw Meghan as a symbol of female empowerment and racial progress, unfairly attacked for speaking her truth. Others viewed her as a privileged celebrity exploiting victimhood for personal gain. Either way, the episode cemented itself as a watershed media moment. The aftermath ratings for The View spiked to their highest in years. The network released a carefully worded statement framing the confrontation as an example of the lively, honest discussions that make The View essential daytime television. Behind closed doors, however, executives were thrilled. The controversy meant one thing: more viewers. Meghan, meanwhile, faced a choice: double down on her narrative or pivot, acknowledging the criticisms and showing a new side of herself. Advisors debated fiercely, knowing that whichever path she chose would define her next chapter. As for Howard Stern, he walked away unscathed, his reputation as America's most fearless interviewer only strengthened. In a world where celebrity interviews are often scripted, sanitized, and predictable, Howard had blown the format wide open. Love him or hate him, he had forced a conversation that no one could ignore. And Meghan Markle, whether she liked it or not, was once again at the center of a storm she thought she could control.